performance management is supposed to be something we do to make people better performers. I can tell you the one time I sat in an office with my CEO and I got rated a 3. I said, I'm a 3? That means I'm average? I didn't leave there very motivated. In fact, it didn't do much to improve my performance. Waiting to the end of the year to give me feedback didn't make me feel very good. It's things like that we need to take a step back as a function and say, what's the outcome we're trying to achieve? And how do we get there in a way that makes sense? It's real. I'm very much believe in a meritocracy, but I don't believe that we're refined enough to rate people into 5 different boxes or 9 different boxes. I don't think that they make a difference in terms of driving better performance. I think feedback waiting to a certain point in time isn't feedback that matters. I don't know. I mean, I have children and grandchildren, and I certainly don't wait to give them feedback when I see something that they could be better at. I tell them at that moment, and I use that moment as an opportunity. How do we make that real? And I think that in the function, it's one of my great learnings is how do we take every aspect of what we do, rethink it in a way that's practical and real and takes the bureaucracy out of things to get the outcomes that we seek. I think the function's at a moment with the leveraging of AI and other things that are happening. We have a chance to rethink things and to be bold and courageous. I'm excited for the function. In fact, I wish I was 20 years younger because I think there's a moment now like never before.
Mike, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad we're making this happen.
Me too.
I've been like, when's Mike's on my bucket list of guests, and now you're finally here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here.
But you waited until you retired and then you joined. I'm only joking. How's retirement treating you? I say retirement, but we should rebrand that word because you're not retired. Like you're like it's just a new chapter. Let's say that, a new chapter.
Yeah. I actually been working with a company called My Next Season, and that's what I call it. It's my next season.
That's a great name. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of rethinking it. It's instead of it being just one company, it's more of a portfolio of things to continue to make a difference. So I'm having a lot of fun.
Imagine if we lived our life through the lens of seasons, like TV shows. Like in this season, you have the little trailer of what's coming up. Before we do that, for people that obviously haven't come across you before, give everyone a quick background and your background and journey to where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those rare people who always wanted to be in HR. So I'm kind of
blessed.
You
are one of the very few. But how though? Was it someone in the family?
Yeah.
Like, because you accidentally.
It's ironic. My dad was the head of it was called personnel at the time for New York City.
Oh,
so
wow.
As a kid, my dad would bring me, and I would sit through negotiations with the sanitation workers and fire department, and go to grievances and arbitrations and. My dad talked about HR stuff every night at the kitchen table. And when it came time for me to apply for college, I had originally graduated and went to work as a welder and a diesel mechanic. And I thought, I'm not going to go to college. But after talking to my dad and the union, I thought I'd go to college to get be active in the union and make a difference in the world. Always thinking about HR. I applied to only one college. Thank God I got in. And I went to Cornell's ILR school. And I've been blessed in a career just doing what I love. I love the field of HR. I can't stop thinking about it every single day of my life. And even in the midst of that, I ended up buying my own company and growing it across the United States, and eventually selling it to a public company, which I got to run as the COO as well. But every minute of that time, I'm thinking about HR. I'm thinking about the function, and I'm thinking about how to make a difference in the world and in the businesses I was part of. So I've just been blessed. I've worked in every industry that you could think of, from heavy manufacturing to financial services, insurance, tech, agriculture, and aerospace. So I've been everywhere, and I've been the head of HR since my late 20s. So I've been at the top role for quite a while. I know I'm not 25 anymore. You probably still think I am, but I'm not.
Yeah, those people listening on audio had no idea though. You should have just pretended.
Yeah, that's right.
They would never have known. So your last role was global chief HR officer at Boeing. Was that right?
You bet.
How long was you there for?
4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
Wow. How does it feel? Like, and what was the moment? Was there a moment in time that made you to come to the decision to retire? I'm just always interested in like,
Yeah.
when is the right time?
Well, it's never the right time. It's a tough, if at least on a personal level, never right time. For me, when I joined Boeing, I was already at an age point where Boeing had mandatory retirement for its execs at 65. I was, quickly over that. And every year there's an exception that's made for people who are over 65. The board has to review it. But when I looked at, I'm a pilot, by the way. The chance to work for Boeing was
Wow, I didn't know that about you.
mind blowing.
So you have a pilot's license?
You bet I do.
Oh my
And
God. All right.
I've been so going to work for Boeing. I have watched Boeing, met with their heads of HR my entire career. There's nothing about Boeing that I don't love.
Wow.
And so getting a chance to go there was a gift from the Lord himself. And but when there was another incident that happened, I knew that it was time for another HR person to go with a new CEO who was just about to come, and spend the next decade with that person. And I wasn't going to be there for the next decade. And so part of I think, doing things right in the world is knowing not necessarily what's right for you personally, but what's right for the company you love so much. And I feel very honored and blessed to have worked at Boeing. It's probably one of the greatest companies I have ever been a part of. And the decision to leave was hard, but it was the right thing for the company. Maybe not the right thing for me at that moment, but the right thing for the company.
I mean, that truly shows your commitment, right, to the people, the profession that you and the people that you serve, right, and part of your why and your purpose to have that, to reflect on that and make that decision, because obviously I can only imagine it can't have been easy to do that. But what you just shared makes so much sense. We're going to have to at some point do a first ever HR Leaders podcast in a plane with you flying.
Yeah, sign me up. I'll pick you up.
That would be, I would literally fly out to you just to do that. That would be unbelievable. How does it work?
We'll set that up.
How does it work? Do you just rent a plane for the day? Like what? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I've had different planes, but I've been flying since I was a kid.
Really?
And
I didn't know any of this about you. Wow.
Yeah. I will tell you, there is nothing in the world like flying.
I can only imagine.
When you're on the runway and the tower says, clear to go, you push the throttle forward.
Oh
and
my God.
And I've taken off so many times, but when you roll down that runway and you just pull the yoke back and all of a sudden you're like in the clouds. I can't even explain it. It's still, every time I take off, it's amazing. And it's a gift like no other. And every time I fly on a commercial airline, I'm sitting in that seat wondering if that one moment will come when the pilot or somebody will come on board. Is there a pilot on board? And I'll get my chance to run into the cockpit and fly some big jet.
Yeah. Nah, that's so cool. When was the last time you flew?
A couple of months ago.
Yeah, wow.
A couple of months ago.
That's must be such a freeing experience. Like you alone up there, disconnected from the world. Like, just I can only imagine like how that must feel.
It's a gift. Do
you have to do like retraining ever so often?
Oh sure.
I can imagine.
Stay there.
Yeah.
And and Boeing, it's what's so great is that for all of its employees, anybody who wants to get a pilot's license, the company pays for it.
No way.
So it's encouraged, and it really is an amazing thing. And there's a lot of things about being a pilot that you learn about HR too, about how do you kind of stay current, how do you kind of constantly learn, how do you deal with stress in the moment, and things happen. So there's I'm always relating everything in my life. I always relate back to what I do. I can't help myself. It's the dynamics of making each one of us as great as we could be is something I think about all the time.
Yeah. Um, have you having how long's it been since you've retired now
About a
from that
year.
role?
About a year. Yeah.
Having had time to reflect back and look back on your career, what are some of the moments you're most proud of?
Oh, geez. I think I'm most proud of the cultures of the company that I had a chance to work with, and the people I worked with. Even to this day, I have such deep respect and admiration for so many people who did so much um, to make companies great, make others great. In fact, Chris, one of the things I've learned is that, the definition of the great cultures, and I've had the pleasure to be part of many companies that had great cultures. It's when you work at a place where the person next to you cares maybe even a little more about your own success, not just at work, but in life, that you're living a great life than even maybe you do. And because you know someone's next to you who cares about you so much, you have the ability to care about someone else.
Mm,
And it's a magical moment that happens in companies. And when you get there, um, it is so freeing and it allows companies to find a new level of success. And I think that's what I'm most proud of. I've been part of companies that have actually had that kind of culture. And it's created lifelong friends and relationships that matter, and great success, not just success at work, but people living great lives, which I think is so critical.
yeah. It's it takes time and a lot of commitment to build that level of trust and that personal beyond personal relationship beyond the work. Like I remember I worked in like a high pressure sales environment for the first 10 years, kind of
Yeah,
like a Wolf of Wall Street type environment, which was like everyone versus everyone mentality. Like the person next to you was your competition. It was pretty brutal, as you can imagine.
yep,
And I moved my team when I became a director off that sales floor because I was like, I need to escape this toxic environment. And slowly but surely built a team where, yes, everyone's trying to hit their sales targets, but to the point where the whole team will stay behind after work if one person on our team hadn't hit their monthly sales target, and we'd all jump on the phone and try and close a deal to help that person achieve their target. And I remember that I was being so proud of that moment because I was like, the first 10 or first 6 years I was there, it was like the opposite, and I managed to create that where I didn't even have to ask anyone. Like
that's
people were
so
just like,
great.
we're staying here. AJ needs to get his deal. That's going to help him hit his commission target, which will help him achieve what's visible on our vision board. Because we had a vision board which everyone on the team could see. Something so simple, so everyone knew what everyone was working towards. And I remember just stepping back, being like, this wasn't a me thing. This wasn't a manager thing. Like the team just said, we're not leaving. Let's order some pizza. We're gonna stay here until we can help AJ get what he needs. And I was just like so proud. Like to your point,
Yeah,
it wasn't about them. It was about the success of someone else. And then that kind of permeated throughout the whole team and became its own subculture in the business, if that makes sense.
that's right.
As well. And then when anyone came into that from other parts of the business, I could see they were kind of shocked. Took them a bit of adjusting because they're so used to sort of the it's me versus everyone else mentality, the me versus the we. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
and once you create that, it's very special. It's very
yeah, it
special
is, and fragile.
and fragile.
It's
Yeah, and it takes one bad apple coming in, and I had a few of those bad apples come in that I very quickly got rid of. The problem is, and I'm sure you've experienced this, some of those bad apples are on paper the highest performers. So I had people coming in that are generating millions of pounds of revenue for the business, but weren't a good fit for that team. That I had to then say to my CEO, I'm letting go of this person. And they're like, what do you mean you're letting go of this person? And I'm like, well, they're literally impacting the rest of my entire team's performance with their behavior as well. And that's hard, it's tough to do. And I'm sure you've been there before where you've got some
oh, I
you
hate
got
to
some,
say it.
yeah.
Yeah, I have been there before, and it's building great teams. We always focus on succession as HR leaders, right? So we're constantly thinking about, um, you know, this person for that role, and and I think sometimes we often miss, it's one of my great learnings, is that it's great teams drive success.
Mm.
And so when you think about the dynamics of teams and how to make them, really successful, interestingly enough, Chris, there's really been a limited amount of research in team effectiveness. It's more now in the recent times, but if you looked at history, not as much. But there is a science to great teams, and great teams get great results. How do you make that work? And I think it's a lot about rethinking lots of things we do in HR today in terms of succession and development itself.
Yeah, I've seen all of the coaching companies out there pivot in the last year or so to coaching as a team sport.
Teams.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it's all around. Even the tech, the coaching tech companies. If you go on their website, it's all around teams. So like, as opposed to when we grew up, the individual, right? As well, because you could have a really high performing individual, but the team suffers on that. And
But
that's
it's interesting,
yeah.
Chris, while you're right on all the consulting firms, what's interesting though is if you think about our profession, and it's one of the things that, I'm trying to write a book now too, so I'm trying to get smarter here, but I- we still focus on succession on individuals. Very
Mm,
often we'll actually have, oh, this is ready now, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, all these terms. And the reality is, succession is about teams. We have a new person and a new role. How does that person impact the rest of the team? What changes have to occur to make this person successful in this new team, or a new leader in a team successful? Um, and I think there's a clear science to making that work, and it's something that we need to work on as a function as well.
yeah. One of the things I'm interested to ask you now, now you can speak a bit more frankly and open. Now you're not in a role. What are some of the sort of unspoken truths that, as HR professionals, we don't talk about enough publicly that we really should? That's quite tough when you're in the role.
Well, I've always been an outspoken soul, so there's very little that I wasn't speaking about
Yeah.
when I was in the
Well, you're
role.
one of the few.
So
You're one of the few.
yeah, but I would say there's some learnings for me that I think we need to be really uh, frank about. Like, for example, I think that performance management, for example, is supposed to be something we do to make people better, to make them better performers. I don't know about you, but I can tell you the one time I sat in an office with my CEO, and I got rated a 3. I said, I'm a 3? That means I'm average? I didn't leave there very motivated. In fact, it didn't do much to improve my performance. Waiting to the end of the year to give me feedback didn't make me feel very good. And I think it's things like that we need to take a step back as a function and say, what's the outcome we're trying to achieve? And how do we get there in a way that makes sense? It's real. So, I've been somebody like, so for example, I think I'm very much believe in a meritocracy, but I don't believe that we're refined enough to rate people into 5 different boxes or 9 different boxes. I don't think that they make a difference in terms of driving better performance. I think feedback waiting to a certain point in time isn't feedback that matters. I don't know. I mean, I have children and grandchildren, and I certainly don't wait to give them feedback when I see something that they could be better at. And I tell them at that moment, and I use that moment as an opportunity. How do we make that real? And I think that in the function, it's one of my great learnings is how do we take every aspect of what we do, rethink it in a way that's practical and real and takes the bureaucracy out of things to get the outcomes that we seek. And I think I think the function's at a moment with the leveraging of AI and other things that are happening. We have a chance to rethink things and to be bold and courageous. And I think I'm excited for the function. In fact, I wish I was 20 years younger because I think there's a moment now like never before. The ability to make dramatic change that would be accepted by organizations hasn't been like this in decades.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that, by the way. And we've never ever done performance reviews at HR leaders.
No,
And
you're
people,
right.
and people are like, why? Well, I'm like, I give feedback every day.
Thank you.
Literally,
That's
like
exactly right.
every day of the week. I'm in conversations, and we have a culture of radical candor and leading with positive intent, and we see that as feedback as a gift and not something that should be isolated. And we all remember the anxiety that you have when you know you've got a performance review coming up, both for the manager and the employee, right? I remember as a manager, I used to be so stressed that I've got to be able to have these conversations, and it's almost like you have to find something wrong, like to give feedback on. Like, I have to find something negative and positive. It was like, why am I doing this? This is insane. Like,
or worse, we'd tell you, oh, you better have this percentage of people that are average.
yeah.
And the reality is, most companies, you think about how hard we work to hire people. We don't just, somebody applies in one interview and bam, you're hired. We're using AI tools, we're using assessment tools, we're interviewing dozens of people in many cases before we make a hire decision. And then you get there and we say, you're average.
Yeah,
you know what, Chris, it's broader than just performance too. When I think about things, I know how hard I always work to create policies and practices that were making sense. And as I got later in my career, I learned that what makes policies and practices drive the culture you want, drives the performance you want, it isn't the policies and practices. It's the smart exceptions you make. And I have so many powerful lessons around that. Everything from, a family who has a child who needs a medical procedure that's not approved. And you make a decision to make an exception to approve it. And all of a sudden, hundreds of people find out about it and say, what a great company this is. I'm never going to leave here. Or recognizing that the more you trust people, the more you empower them, the more you get back. So things like, by the way, if you need to take time off, it's okay. You have to have a good reason. I get it, within the limits, but if there's exceptions, we can make them. And when you make that exception, that person comes back and says, I'm so loyal and so grateful for that exception. I'm going to work my tail off to make up for it.
Yeah.
And it's understanding to empower the lowest level managers and people to make smart exceptions to policies and practices is what makes great companies. But boy, that's hard. And it took me a while to figure that out, because I kept trying to design the perfect practices and policies. Yeah. And then I realized they're never going to work for everybody. And so I got to make this real and treat people with the golden rule of, how would I want to be treated? And then have managers know they're empowered to do the same.
Yeah. I love the concept of smart exceptions. It's so important. We had a CHRO session this Wednesday, yesterday. So yesterday, I'm losing my mind. It's Friday today, 2 days ago. And one of the powerful examples one of the CHROs shared, which is, I would class as a smart exception, was they found out that there was an employee who someone had passed away in their family, and they didn't take any bereavement leave because they didn't know, it wasn't that the length of it wasn't within the policy, and that person was using their holiday entitlement to take those days. So now they don't have any holiday because they took the holiday days as the bereavement days, right? And she found out and was like, no, we're happy to, I know the policy says X, but we'll the holidays are now, you can take the time off, you've got the holidays still. And she was like, this was like a story from like a year ago. And she was saying that person so engaged, so, motivated, is going above and beyond, and tells that story about how, like you said, that's something that they will never forget, about how you made them feel and what you did in that moment when they really needed it. But you have to have the culture where your managers feel empowered that they can make those decisions, right, without having to go up to HR and ask for permission and saying, oh no, that's not our policy.
Well, the minute they have to go to HR to do it, you lose the power of the exception. It becomes, HR's.
How did you manage that? Level. Like, how did you communicate that? Because it's quite tough. Because it's really, there's no. I mean, the whole point of a smart exception is it's within the. it's not binary, right?
No, it's not binary. I think I always tell managers, and I always have, treat people the way you would want to be treated. And, we have policies and practice, the great guidelines. Okay, great. And then we make smart exceptions. It's also important to recognize that, I know we think people come to work and they leave behind the rest of their life. That's not true. people are whole people. They carry with them the burdens of life everywhere they go. And understanding that an exception at one moment um, can drive all kinds of positive things. And you got to just be smart about how to do it.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Chris, one of the things I found is the more that I would explain about smart exceptions, I would trust managers to do it. And you know what? They were tougher than I would be. They, trying to figure out how to do that, they struggled with, but they loved the empowerment. And I think, but it's part of where the function has to think differently. Like for me, we run businesses, and sometimes we have to make tough decisions about letting people go, whether we have a layoff, reduction in force, or whatever. And to me, it's one of the cultural things that happens, and it's a good example of exceptions. Typically, companies say, "Well, we're going to pay you severance, and the severance is whatever, and there's a policy and a formula, and that's all great." But the metric that matters when you have those situations isn't how many people got let go and did we do this in an orderly way. It's how quickly did those people that we let go get landed in something else. And in fact, that's the metric that matters and that I've always looked to measure. So if we had X number of thousand people that we had to unfortunately let go, not because of performance, but because the company had to make some restructure, then how do we make sure they bridge to something else? And the impact on that was not just for those people impacted, but for every other person that wasn't impacted, that knew, here, I work for a company that cares so much that is actually helping people proactively find something else.
Yeah. And you'll see a lot of times if you do that the right way, like you said, with empathy and care, many boomerang back.
Yeah, and you nailed the magic word. It's care. Yeah, the reality is we can be tough and great companies that are driving really extraordinary performance on a consistent basis and deeply care about each other and deeply care about the company. And the way to do that is to make sure that we also care about living a great life, having a great career and a great life. And if you don't do both, by the way, as a company, you're not succeeding.
Yeah.
You got to be able to figure out how to do both. And that's what great HR work is about. Great companies with extraordinary performance, with people living great lives.
Yeah. In Vegas last week, I was at a CHRO dinner with 20 of the top CHROs from the largest companies in the world. It was an incredible group.
Yep.
And it became very clear after the first couple of conversations that many were really struggling. There's a lot going on right now, where it's political,
Yeah.
the economy, it's social injustice, you name it. AI, like the wars, they're going on, and all of it. A lot of this is falling on the HR in the ways that they and it seems to be just never ending. And there was a couple of CHROs around the table that at the end of the meeting said, "Hey, if I didn't come to this dinner today, I think I may have walked away in the next couple of months, but you guys have given me a newfound sense of purpose and inspiration." What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like it's just another moment in time, or do you think this is one of the toughest times we've faced as a profession, but also the most exciting as well?
I am what's the right word? I am just constantly overwhelmed with a growth mindset. I guess that's the way I put it to you. I live life waking up in the morning saying, God gave me another day. What a gift. So I look at things in a positive way. I would tell you this, without any question, we are at a moment in time that there's a lot of stress on the function and a big burden. Um, and But I think it's a gift to be able to rethink things like we just talked about in performance management and make dramatic changes that, what would have been really hard before and would have taken many, many years and lots of steps along the way to get accepted. So I think this is a moment in time where we can be bold and courageous, and we can take a step back and say, what's the right way to handle this? Whether it be how we implement AI into our companies, into our teams, to just thinking about things like learning. Chris, when you think about learning, whether it be Boeing or ADM or Citigroup, I've been with huge companies. And we had huge learning centers. And we would sit people in classrooms and we would have all these learning experiences, and very little of it got applied. Maybe because my boss wasn't there and so they don't use the new tools. Maybe because when I'm in a crisis, I go back to doing what I did before. So is it time to rethink how we develop people? Is it time to rethink about how we reward people? Is it time to rethink about how we think, about opportunity and creating the meritocracy we all seek? I think the answer is yes. And what an unbelievable gift. What a chance and a moment in time. And yeah, it's stressful. And by the way, when wasn't it? I mean, to be honest with you, I've worked with so many CEOs, and every company I've been in has been some kind of transformation or, transitionary period or challenges that were significant. And you could say they were stressful. I always looked at it as an opportunity to learn and think of new things. How do we come up with better solutions? How do we prioritize in a way to work on the things that matter? Um, so yeah, and I think getting together and sharing. One of the things I've learned in my career is the great gifts I've gotten from my peers. I've been blessed to, know an awful lot of my peers, work with many of them. They're brilliant and gifted and talented in so many ways. And in the meetings like you just described, when there's true psychological safety, people really trust. All of a sudden, the doors open up and ideas flow, and maybe your idea and another idea and another idea comes up with the bigger idea that nobody thought of, which is the gift of those kinds of sessions and meetings, which I honestly enjoy and miss.
Yeah. Well, well, first and foremost, I can tell, and I love the fact that the combination of leading with gratitude, like you mentioned, like I'm alive another day, and having that growth mindset combined is very powerful. But outside of that, how do you ensure that you take care of your own well-being though during those tough times? What are some of the practices you've had over the years? Because despite what you just said, it can't be easy.
No, it can't be easy. And to be honest, I don't think I'm a great role model. It's what maybe one of my lessons is that I didn't do as good a job. In fact, when I look back, Chris, I can't tell you how many times I missed a Boy Scout meeting, class play. I have this unbelievable wife and partner who's my best friend and always been there for me. But I sometimes think, so I didn't do as good a job at that as I think I could have. I prioritized travel and work and other things when, I really wasn't as big a deal. And I never wanted an exception. I never asked for an exception. But it taught me a lot to be better to others. And it taught me a lot about how to build a better culture. I can tell you when I find an employee that works for me, and when I did, who has a family event going on and they're still coming to an office or going to a meeting, I'm the first one that helps them pack their luggage and get out the door. And I do it in a way that makes them feel good about it. When my teams would go on vacation, I would do everything in my power to make sure no one talked to them. In fact, if I could, I would have shut off their email and taken their phone hostage. Um, you know, so I think, in my life, I probably could have done a lot better, a lot better. And I think God helped me through that so that I could make it better for others. And so at this point in my life, I did it in my last two jobs where I talked about, that every day, living a great life. At Boeing, I think you couldn't find a Boeing exec that didn't hear me talk about we're not successful as a company if we just have people have great careers. They have to have both great careers and great lives.
Yeah.
And so, if I were to go back in time, I wish, you can't do that, but maybe someday there'll be a time machine that I could fly and go back. I'd probably tell my younger self to not be so obsessed with going ahead. Like many, Chris, I started out with nothing, literally just a bunch of student loans and a toaster and a couple of irons. And, so making money and providing was a high priority. And I was willing to sacrifice a lot for that. And instead, I probably should have rethought it over and over. I wish I had a boss that did what I get the gift to do many times, did many times, which is to get people to stop it, take a deep breath, and say, "This meeting's not that important. It's fine. You're not going to get promoted. You're not going to get a bigger raise. It's okay." And It doesn't mean that there aren't moments, there are things that are critical, but having a boss that helps you do that, understand what is and what isn't, would help you live a great life. And that's what I think I've been able to do in the latter part of my life.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that, and I think myself and everyone listening can probably relate to that, right? And it's, you kind of just get caught up. I have a young daughter of 6 years old, and there's certain things
God bless you.
that I've missed as well, and I'm trying to be better. I've kind of now put some guardrails in my calendar and some non-negotiables that the team know that I'm not going to miss this. I'm going to be here at this time, and yes, I've got 50 emails in my inbox, but what, the world's not going to fall apart if I don't reply to them. But I'm not perfect, and one of the things that my coach Chester Elton's helped me out a lot is just give myself grace. Give yourself grace. That's a good one. Give grace. Yeah, don't beat yourself up. Because we have both similar upbringings, right? And I'm doing it to try and provide a better future for my daughter and my wife. But you can't just use that as the excuse, because if you're doing that and you're not having time to spend with them, then why are you doing it? That's kind of the thing. I used to make the excuse, I'm doing it for my wife, I'm doing it for, well, really, Chris, are you? Because you what's the point if you're not actually there at the moments that matter?
That's right. Chris, this phone thing that we have,
yeah,
I'll tell you a story that tell you how, bad you could get. I go for my my annual physical. My wife's with me. My wife goes to the doctor. I'm really worried about my husband. When we go out to eat, he's running back and forth to the bathroom, and I'm, really worried about him. Maybe there's something wrong. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, I got to be honest. The truth is, I'm not going to the bathroom. I'm in there with every other guy that's in the men's room on the phone, because I didn't want to do it while I was sitting across from you at the dining table in a restaurant. And I think that's how obsessive you can get. But my boys are both grown now. I have two boys, both very successful, leading great lives. And when I hear them talk about their childhood, with both my wife and I, unfortunately, they have great memories, but they still talk about the things I missed.
Mm-hmm.
And I reflect now and I say, oh, geez, was it really that important? Look, they're both successful. Life's good. Why did I have to go to that meeting? Why did I think that was more important for me to miss this than go to something, for work? Yeah.
Yeah. On the other side, though, you should be very proud of what you've achieved, right? And the life that you created for them, right? It doesn't come without sacrifice. That's one thing for sure.
For sure.
So whilst we're saying all of this, like people always say that to my mum worries about me. She's like, we don't see you. You don't come behind the house a lot. My younger brother and sisters almost feel like I've just like disowned them. And I'm like, I'm trying to achieve something extraordinary. And in order to do that, it does come with sacrifice. So you have to be prepared to do that and understand that it's going to be a little bit it's lonely as well, right? And like you got to ignore
it is lonely.
You got to ignore everyone around you just saying, Chris, like you don't care about us, and you're trying, and the amount of people that almost kind of like are rooting for your failure in a weird way, that are like, because you're trying to push for something, they're like, who are you to even try and achieve that? From where we grew up, where we had
I get it
nothing.
Well, I think it's
yeah
I think that people talk about balance a lot. I don't think there's ever a possibility of balance. No. I think what I talk about is being present. And that's the phone example is a good one for me, like the bathroom.
You're not being present. Yeah.
When you're there and you're with your daughter, be with your daughter.
I'm got better at that now. So when I get home from work, I would walk in the house and go straight to my computer, which was awful. And I sound saying it out loud now, embarrassed to say that. Whereas now, not only do I finish work early as much as I can to pick her up from nursery, which she's so excited now to see me at the gate.
Get to pick her up.
And then not all the time, just to be clear, but when I can. But when I do get in, I put my phone away, and between the hours of 6 till 8, when we're eating dinner and just playing, I'm just fully present. There's no emails, there's no phone. We're sitting there playing games, doing Just Dance, or playing some games, or doing some puzzles, whatever it may be. But I'm just there. And to be honest, it's as much for me as it is for her.
Well, and watch what'll happen, Chris, because it's me. Someday she'll grow up and maybe she'll have a family like my kids do, and you'll be sitting in a room and you'll hear, like I have, my son talking to my granddaughter, talking about the good moments with dad, with grandpa.
Mm.
And you'll say, wow, it was all worth it. So I'm glad you're doing that. It's important.
Yeah. How does it make you feel on when you reflect on the journey and what you've accomplished now and the life that you live?
I feel blessed and still um, feeling obligated to give back. How else can I say thank you for the great gifts? Chris, I've worked with some amazing, talented people who've, had great careers, and hopefully I've helped live great lives too. But I'm forever grateful, and still humble that I have to give back. So in my quote, next season, I keep thinking about how am I giving back? Whether it be helping the United States build a portfolio of skilled labor again, or in a broad case, or I'm on the SHRM board and I enjoy being part of that, thinking about the function in a broader context. Um, and I try to do some consulting and other things where I can kind of be a sounding board for the tough time that we're in about driving change and taking the decades of experience I've had and say, "Hey, here's a way to think about it. Here's another way to look at it, and let people know that it's okay to be courageous. It's okay to drive change that's dramatic, and it's okay to get it wrong because we reserve the right to get smarter every day. So when we trip, when we miss, it's a great learning moment. Doesn't happen twice, but we got to make sure that we embrace that too. And so, to the degree I can help people do that, I work hard at that.
Yeah, I love that. Um, I just realized how much time flew by chatting, which is
Yeah,
which means we're having a good conversation.
that's good.
What advice would you give to those HR leaders of tomorrow that are maybe coming into sitting in the seat for the first time, and even those ones that are still sitting there that have been around for a while, who are facing a lot of challenges right now?
Well, it's one of my pet things. In fact, I'm an exec in residence up at Cornell there for a bit at the ILR school, and I had a lot of fun doing it. It's one of the things I preached everywhere. Number one thing, we as a function, lots of consulting firms have said part of the components of being a great HR leader is business acumen, and somehow we have redefined the word acumen to mean a cursory knowledge. So, what I would tell people in HR, the number one thing for you to do is to get deep in your business. Understand your business as well as your CEO does. And read all the investor reports. Read about your competitors. Understand the financials of your business. And when you have that grounding, it'll give you the courage and the knowledge to prioritize what we do in HR aligned with the business in a much more effective way. So that's number one. Number two, and it's one of my learnings in over the last decade, particularly. I love hiring HR professionals right off campus coming into the companies that I've worked with, and they all want the same. I want to be a generalist. I want a big generalist job. They want to go out in a plant. They want to go out in the field, have generalist jobs. When I look at my own career and I look at what's needed today in the future, um, it's probably the wrong decision. The right decision is as quickly as you can get deep in every aspect of the function. Learn about rewards, learn about labor and employee relations in an effective way. Learn about, the legal side of our function. Be deep in talent management and assessment. Get certified in assessment skills. And then when you have those, then become a generalist. So, number one, be a great business leader, not just business acumen, not a business partner necessarily, but a business leader. And number two, come to the table with the knowledge and expertise of our function that differentiates you from everybody else. Because when you do that, you'll be sought after by every business leader and every manager because they know you can add immediate value with the technical knowledge and skills you have.
Wow, I love that, man. That's such good advice. I'm excited to share that with everyone. Before I let you go, where can people reach out to you and connect if they want to reach out, say
Yeah,
hi, and
on LinkedIn. I've got a pretty good following on LinkedIn. And that's an easy way to do that. And I'd love to connect with everybody there. I will tell you, if I can help anybody in any way, I'm always there. Um, and my email's there and the rest is there. I will say, Chris, one of the things about my next season, it's all about how can I give back? How can I thank, the world I live in and so many people in ways to, for a life that I never thought I'd ever have, for an opportunity and a set of accomplishments that, weren't all mine. They were all the people I worked with, but goodness gracious, I'm pretty blessed. So I'm happy to help anybody I can.
Mike, it's a pleasure having you on the show. I appreciate you sharing your story and journey, and thanks for everything you've given back to the profession. And I'm super excited for this next season.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah. Well, Chris, keep doing what
well,
you're doing too, and don't underestimate the difference you're making, because the reality is, when you think about a simple post, I know you and your team work on and other things, you might say, what's the, how many people looked at it and whatever. You'd be surprised, not just the views, but how many people talk about it. And I think, you demonstrate care, and the things I talked about just in our time together. Honestly, I know we didn't grow up together, but somehow I think we're very aligned in how we think. And don't stop thinking that way, because you're right. And it's what makes great companies and what makes a difference in the world we live in.
No, I appreciate that. We're just chugging away.
I know.
Doing our best. But I appreciate you. Listen,
Right.
thanks for coming on the show, and I'll see you soon. All right. Thanks a lot.
You bet. All the best. Take care.
Thanks.